was there. We spoke of was and when, although I wasn't there. He said I was his friend, which came as some surprise. I spoke into his eyes. I thought you died alone a long, long time ago. Oh no, not me. I never lost control. Your face to face with the man who sold the world.
Chapter 21. Andrew centered himself on a wooden bench inside of City Hall. He measured his breath. His suit was pressed and his beard was tighter than it had been in nearly a year. His palms were unusually dry. The stone structure held the cool blast of air shooting from various offices. Oil paintings, oak, and the occasional wandering ombudsman kept his eyes occupied. A staffer opened the doors for him. "The mayor will see you now." Philadelphia, to the naked eye, was an easily navigated grid system. But insiders understood the complicated labyrinth that existed to make the whole machine run. Andrew ate it up as an observer. He never felt like a participant. He didn't bleed green, and he hated his neighbors. This was about more than rich and poor. It was decades of ripping apart progress at the seams and leaning on all the feel-goods that never seemed to alleviate poverty. They never will. They were not intended to. Andrew figured he may as well benefit from the operation. It beat the perpetually sad, paper-pushing, subway-riding, sweat-stained, collared Philadelphian he was supposed to admire. He was depressed on his own. He didn't need the tourism bureau to remind him to revel in it. He was led to the mayor's office. When the 10-foot door creaked open, he found Anthony Morris and Robert Price practicing politics. They directed their attention to Andrew. "I thought you two hated each other," he said. Effectively breaking the ice, he enjoyed the laughter of his fellow power-hungry sociopaths. "Why are you here?" the mayor asked. "Better yet, who are you?" "He's here because Sam Pearson is retiring," the chairman interjected. "He is?" Andrew asked. "He doesn't know it yet," the chairman answered. "Have a seat," the mayor offered. "Andrew." He extended his hand to the mayor. It was received. "Andrew. Okay." Anthony Morris's grip was strong. That was impressive for some reason. "Andrew, what do you know about Philadelphia?" "Affluence and squalor pass each other by, relying on the other to survive," he answered. "There is a thin line between the two. We know this to be false. The factors that lead to each are generational curses waiting to be broken. You can fundraise. You don't have to speak to anyone either," the mayor said. "Can you start in the new fiscal year?" Chairman asked. "I can start sooner." "Don't be desperate, son." Andrew was drenched. He could feel sweat stains forming on his suit jacket. It was extreme. "Think about it," the mayor advised. "We can talk about it on an ongoing basis." "Join us Friday night," the chairman added. Behind his $12,000 suits and 40th floor view was a man who suffered from what many would call the Gatsby syndrome. It has afflicted the materially successful from the dawn of time and often served as a driving force for virtually every protagonist written since the original. Robert's self-awareness propelled his anxiety. Personality problems permeated his penthouse. Boiling. Poor chairman. He had 2 hours until the meeting. If he could make the purchase and do it clean, he would be the sole shareholder in the most valued piece of property in the city. How had he gotten here? He set his gold fountain pen down and removed his glasses. He would like to imagine that he started as a janitor, but that wasn't the case. The janitor was the first person he saw when he arrived for his interview, arranged by his father through a connection at his small law firm. His father's powers grew to be colossal. Robert Price's place in the pecking order gave him the key to the city. A fool and his money soon go separate ways, and $1 million led to 1 million stories, usually stemming from his lavish parties. Most folks' natural lives began in the womb. For Robert and those he would encounter, theirs began in a penthouse. The window behind Robert faced north, and he refused to turn around. This week, his interests were set on Friday evening in his palatial Towers residential domicile. Chairman's cocktail parties gave everyone the chance to rid their frustrations from the work week. The buzz drove the conversation, but they'd never admit it. That would mean getting over themselves. Instead, their outfits were procured at dawn, and their accessories were complimented by the stars. Little black dresses bopped through the penthouse. Their conversations were hollow. Memories that were the most difficult to repress were the happy ones. Yet, they needed to go to make space for the focus on the bad, and the reasoning why it had to remain that way. Succumbing to the positive memories was simply a way of giving up. Andrew often thought about the fall from grace. What did it look like at different levels? This kept him motivated and frightened. He would smile more if he stepped away from avoiding the fall and instead took a leap. For Andrew, it was considered worldly to look beyond the neighborhood for a restaurant or a shop. Now, he was ascending beyond his floor to a private elevator that beamed him into the living room of the powerful. His conscience was as gray as a black and white television. Charlotte, glowing, stood by his side. She proved to be a wealth of knowledge, enrapturing her prey with a stare. The attention was inevitable, and the onlookers loved her indifference. Andrew's wet palms gave off an uncomfortable cooling, like an off-brand ointment. Her insanity was fodder for their self-proclaimed outside-of-the-box thinking. Without her own security, she would never match with Andrew. It was obvious to everyone but him. Shades of shrewdness broke through his fog, but he was generally aloof and insecure. "Running for Senate," she whispered, and guided his eyes. Head of the school board, pharmaceuticals, developer, union leader. Andrew felt a hand on his back. "Fellow fundraisers." Chairman kissed Charlotte's cheek and slid her a glass of champagne in one fell swoop. Somehow, Andrew had one as well. The three clinked. "What do you think?" Chairman asked. "Fabulous," Charlotte answered. She feigned admiration over his grandeur. Andrew was genuinely overwhelmed. "Is the man himself here?" Andrew asked. "No. Politicians? Absolutely not. These people run the machine. Politicians are siphoning, suckling at the teat." Andrew hesitated to raise his eyebrows. "You're welcome," Chairman said. Andrew could barely hear whatever an old man was blabbering to Charlotte about her dead father. His head was spinning. This was a moment he dreamed of. He tried, unsuccessfully, to act like he'd been there before. He hadn't. This was intimate and fun again. Charlotte's heart raced when she caught him eyeing the little black dresses. She thought about being on top of him and shutting off her brain. "You're so measured," Chairman continued to compliment him. "Sam used to be that way." Sam was no longer part of the plan or of value to those who were planning. Instead, His awakening and formation of a soul was unsettling to those who relied on him to keep up their public charade. Chairman and the mayor knew he was weak before he did. They could see the cracks, and instead of extending friendship, they would expedite his retirement however they could. Andrew would fill the gap. His humanity was gone, and even if it was temporary, it was good enough for them. Sam was a drag. He was too old and too self-righteous to be effective. Salary increase assuaged Andrew's guilt. He would justify the backstabbing any way he could. It was disgustingly his style. He did not do anything himself, but instead benefited from the dirty work. Chairman would stroke his pen to build or destroy. Sam deserved more, but this is how it would be. Legal gave Chairman a briefing. Now he would meet with each director in the weeks before the groundbreaking New Year's ceremony. His wife was again spending more time at the penthouse, and Carol was absent from the party. 40 stories below, Jeff wiped his bald head with a bar napkin and lit a cigarette. He scanned the room and sipped his beer. He reflected on the conversation he had with Sam earlier that morning. "When will you acknowledge your addiction?" Sam asked. "When it actually exists. If I opened your phone right now—" "Shut up, Sam. You don't like naked women?" Jeff asked. "That's beside the point. It's not the only thing rolling around in my brain." "Such bullshit. We can check out asses around here. That's not enough, but digitally is too much. My eyeballs don't have a search history, Jeff." Fuck. "Listen. You made a lot of money for us here. I know it's a tough time. Go home. Beat off. We'll replace everything here and no one else will know. But this is both a first and final warning." "Do you know how distracting it is? Sometimes it's a physical need, but it's like I'm trained by my mental disturbance. I like a specific type, Sam. Women, not girls. None of that jailbait stuff. That's for deviants and perverts. No, this is about lust. It's an equalizer. Physically, financially, socially. It's dulling to the brain. And yeah, I fuck around. What does it matter if I'm not fucking my wife anymore? We're all faces on the screen." "Jeff, I stopped listening. I don't need to be involved with legal. I'll see you next week." Jeff left the office embarrassed. He should have known better, that any conversation with Sam wouldn't be a friendly chat. It had been years since they had one, and he didn't think the man was capable of them any longer. When he reached his office door, he could feel Andrew's eyes on him. Jeff mocked jerking off in his direction and proceeded to his space. The old tissues, the booze, the dirty magazine, and a bottle of Vicodin filled the deepest drawer of his desk. He had to clear it. He rifled through all of his drawers. No luck on trash bags. In the closet of the organization's freebies, he found a dusty duffel bag and stuffed it to the brim. The dirty magazines muffled the sounds of the bottles and made it impossible to zipper. Andrew stopped him in the doorway. "Got a minute?" Jeff glared at him. Andrew's attention was drawn to the old Hustler logo poking out of the bag. "Sorry, man," Andrew said. "For what?" Now, at McGlinchey's, he enjoyed the quiet so much he forgot it was Friday. The bartender reminded him with a nod to his short funds. "Happy hour was yesterday, pal." He was new. Jeff ponied up $5 and exchanged his empty bottle for a sweating high life without making eye contact. He could not be embarrassed for long because he was distracted by the commotion of someone at the ATM who didn't know the cash-only policy. Then he locked eyes with what he could only describe as a mystery across the bar. Charlotte, determined to hide her distaste, smiled back. Andrew appeared in his line of vision. He was counting his fresh cash. He looked at Jeff. and began to walk to the other side, but Jeff politely cautioned him with a wave of his hand and motioned to Charlotte. He raised his glass. Andrew and Charlotte returned the gesture. Jeff lit a cigarette and looked up to the television. He was alone and needed to leave after this beer. He felt a presence in the bar stool next to him. A glimpse at the skin of her hand led him to believe she was a blonde. He was correct. "A special?" she ordered. The bartender nodded. "Me too," Jeff blurted out. He motioned to his kitty of dollars on the bar. He put down a 10 and locked eyes with the bartender. Smooth he was not. "Thanks," the blonde said. Jeff and the blonde took their acidic shots of Jim Beam. "You like it here?" he asked. "Yeah. Does that surprise you?" "No. Just curious. Gives you a chance to think about how it ends and that this is all you need." Jeff knew she couldn't have been older than 30, and he was excited by the prospect of touching something frivolous. Jessica was a thing of the past. He was drunk and got handsy while they were in the front seat of his car. She realized the danger in the seclusion of the parking lot as she regretted her decision. Jeff kept shoving his hands up her thighs. She batted them away a third time and pulled away from his kiss. She kept cordial to avoid any backlash. "Let's save it for next time." Jeff dove in for another kiss and she pulled back. "Now give me a fucking break," Jeff shouted. He was embarrassed. She snarled at him. "Ew, dude, gross." She got out of the car and slammed the door. Jeff sat with it. He scared the rage out of himself. He trembled before weeping into his hands. Drinking was whatever he needed it to be. A facilitator, a confidant, an accelerant, an excuse. He always had one. He grew less patient with booze, and needed a strong dose less frequently. The estimate lifespan of his ergonomic desk chair signals several sedentary decades ahead. As long as the charts rose, the grumblings would remain past that. No tears would be shed by his departure, and no ill will would surface. He was validated, elevated to the lowest form of conversation. Bottom lines, forecasts, reviews, breakdowns. They were robots in a room spouting statistics and empty platitudes. Fantasies of the past were no longer about the partners or the details. They were reflections of his diminishing virility.
So many problems, yet none at all. So many windows through every wall. So many feelings you won't express. So many failures you call success.
Don't let it get you down. Don't let it get you down.
You cry over losing what you never really had. Just remember the good times alongside the bad. Remember that real love never disappears. If it's lost at a moment, it'll last for years.
Don't let it get you down. Don't let it get you down. Don't let it get you down. Don't let it get you down.
the king and queen. You are the crown.